I am challenged and excited to be able to share with you, excited to be partners with Dean here to bring you Matthew, because I look at him as a pragmatic poet. He's a man who, he's pragmatic because he gets the job done, but he's so poetic in his willingness to dig in and go for real answers. And I've been watching this morning, all of you on the wall there, and seeing the kinds of things you've opened up to and admitted to, and that opens up progress for anyone. But Matthew and I share something else in common. We're both journalers. We know the power of questions. You know, one of the things I've learned is questions are the answer. If you want better answers, you need better questions. And a lot of us ask lousy questions like, why does this always happen to me? And so the brain reflexively says, well, because you're an idiot, because you don't deserve it, because you're an imposter. Or how come I can never lose weight? And your brain goes, because you're a pig. These things do not help. But if you ask a better question, how can I lose weight and enjoy the process? And all of a sudden you go, I used to play racquetball. What if I played racquetball and I'm having fun? I'm not even worried about it. I'm losing weight. The quality of life is the quality of our questions. And I tell you this because the question I've been obsessed by for 46 years, I started when I was 2, of course, right? But for 46 years, I've been obsessed with the question of what makes the difference in the quality of people's lives. Why is it there's some people, you can give them everything? I mean, everything they could possibly imagine. They get love from their family. They have support. They have money. They have education. They have opportunity. And many of those people, not all, but many of those people end up spending their life going in and out of rehab. I'm sure you could think of some names right off the top of your head, famous people. On the other side, you can think of people that life has just been brutal to, where they've experienced nothing but injustice or abuse. And yet many of those people become the stories that inspire us the most, the Oprahs of the world. So one thing I learned early on, and I learned this not because I was so smart, I learned this because also I wanted the answer. It wasn't I was an intellectual. I had a pretty rough life. I grew up in a very poor environment financially, but also poor emotionally. My mom's a great lady, but I had 4 different fathers, so they didn't all quite agree. And I remember one day I went to my mom and said, I'm confused, which one is my dad? And I wasn't the kid in school that was the most popular kid in school, not even slightly. But I noticed the most popular kid in school treated my friends and I like we were dirt. And I was like, it made me want to understand the human psyche. It made me want to become kind of a practical psychologist. I had to be to deal with my mom too, because she drank alcohol to excess, unfortunately. She's a great woman. But then when she had a prescription drug, she got pretty violent. So, I had some experiences that were quite brutal. But my mom has since passed. I didn't even talk about this until one day I was working with this group of kids in New York that all were from single parent households, mostly African-American, Hispanic kids. And I'm this tall white guy. What could I possibly know what they went through? So I told them the whole story, the liquid soap down my throat, the throwing up, the bashing my head, all these things. And they were crying their eyes out. But I was able to get across to them that biography is not destiny. That where you've been does not determine where you have to go. And that's the most important lesson I think we can all get in our lives. And so I wanted answers. I wanted to know what that difference was in people. And I had no one around me as role models. So I became a voracious reader. I even took a speed reading class when I was still in high school, my sophomore year, freshman year. And I wanted to read a book a day. I didn't do that. But I read about 700 books in 7 years. I was obsessed. Anything that could improve your life physically, mentally, emotionally, your body. And then I tried to apply it. And I started with me being overweight as a kid, and I lost the weight, and it changed my relationship with girls, which definitely incentivizes you in high school at that stage. And then I helped my friends, and then I got hooked on having answers to help my friends as well, and then it grew from that area. But it started with me looking for those answers, and it started, quite frankly, with a seminar. It's why I know the power of this kind of education, because a lot of people don't read, or they read partially, they don't act on it. Because it's missing the movement, the emotion that comes when someone's looking in your eye and sharing from their heart and soul, like Matthew has done here. And so the bottom line is I was working for this man on the weekends, still in high school, moving furniture, because my dad told me this guy used to be such a loser and now he was successful. And I was like, I want to learn what he does. So I'm moving this furniture. He used to flip houses in the late 70s in Orange County, California. And so I'm moving. He goes, you're a hard worker. And he said, have lunch with me. And so I had lunch with him. I said, can I ask you a question? I said, my dad said you used to be such a loser. Now you're so successful. Only a kid can say this, right? And I wasn't being harsh. And I said, how'd you do that? And he said, your dad said what? And he said, well, it's pretty true. And he said, well, it all changed because I went to a seminar. And I said, what's a seminar? And I even heard of such a thing. He said, well, a man takes his life experience, 30 or 40 years of his life, 25 years of life, and he shares you the best of what he's learned and show you the shortcuts, what you need to face, what you need to do, how to get there quicker. And I said, wow. He goes, yeah, he shows you what his failures and successes and what worked. And he does that all in one night? Yeah, in 3.5 hours. I said, could you get me in? He goes, yes. And he never said anything else. I said, well, will you? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, well, because you got to pay for it. You won't value it. I go, no, I'm working as a janitor. I'm in high school. It's like, trust me, I'll value. He goes, no. How much is it? $35. It'd be $400 in today's dollars, to give you an idea. $35. I was making $40 a week as a janitor. So I was like, that's a week's pay. He goes, okay, well then don't go and learn on your own and take decades to figure out and maybe never figure it out. It's up to you. So I made at the time what I thought was the most intense decision of my life. And, looking back on it, it wasn't a big decision, but it was one of the more important ones. It was the first time I decided to invest in myself. And I went to the seminar by Jim Rohn, and I'd read a lot of the books he was talking about. I was finishing some of his phrases, and people at the table look at this kid. I was so crazy passionate about these things. And sure enough, as I listened, he taught me some simple things that still ring true today. And one of those things was, for things to change, you got to change. Everybody wants things to change, but that's not how it works. In fact, by the way, change, you don't have to work at it these days. Change is automatic, right? As time goes by, the economy is going to change. You can guarantee that. Relationships are going to change. Your body's going to change. No matter what you do, there's going to be change. Change is automatic. Progress is not. And I realized progress means for things to get better for me, I got to get better. And the great lesson he gave me is he said, Tony, you got to learn to work harder on yourself than your job. You got to learn to become a more valuable human being. You got to get the skills that matter. In fact, I remember years later, I interviewed Warren Buffett. I was doing a financial book, and I asked him, what's the single most important investment you've ever made? And I expect he was going to say Coca-Cola or Geico, because I knew his top investments. And he paused for a moment. He goes, it's what you do, Tony. I said, well, I do a lot of things. What thing are you talking about? He goes, teaching people how to manage their emotions and how to communicate. He goes, I went to Dale Carnegie, and he goes, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it was at that time, 60 years ago. And he goes, all I can tell you is without that, all my other financial knowledge would be worthless. My ability to communicate it, my ability to get through to people, my ability to use my humor, all those things came out of that. And he goes, and I just saw an interview that was done just a few weeks ago. He does this annual meeting with all the people that invest in his company. And someone was asking about inflation. And they said, what do you do with inflation at 8%, maybe 9%? He goes, don't worry about it. Work harder on you. Go invest in you. That's the best investment. Develop your skills. If you're the best doctor or lawyer or salesperson or writer or webcaster or whatever, it doesn't matter what happens to the economy. You're going to do well. Plus, no one can tax that. And it gets better with time. Invest in you. So I made those investments. And I remember asking Jim Rohn, I said, my fathers were all good men. I don't understand why we're so broke. I feed people today, not because I'm such a good person. I feed people because I know what feels like not to have any food. And somebody when I was 11 came and fed our family. And I never forgot it. And it made me believe strangers care. It was the biggest change in my life. And it made me care about strangers. But at the time, I just said to him, I said, why do my fathers work hard and they lose their jobs? He goes, Tony, because you have to understand, we're all equal as souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. So what does that mean? He said, you have to learn to become more valuable for what people need. If you develop that, you can do whatever you want in your life. I said, give me an example. He goes, well, I talked to him earlier about, I thought it was so unfair that teachers made so little money and these hedge fund guys made $1 billion that year. One guy was very famous, did it. He said, Tony, well, let's start with McDonald's. He said, no disrespect to McDonald's, but people say they should pay more. The job skills that they have at McDonald's are only worth minimum pay. It's not supposed to be your permanent job. It's the first job. You learn to be responsible and do things. And then you develop more skill and you get paid more and you develop a new business, a new career, a new direction. He said, the school teachers, some are good, some are not. He goes, and they're affecting 30 or 40 people. He said, this guy made $1 billion, made $100 billion for his clients. He made a 40% return. Normally people in those days would get 4 or 5%. He advanced their careers. He advanced their business. He advanced their pensions. He's paid for their college educations. He's worth it. He's absolutely worth it. So he said, the bottom line is, if you become more valuable, you can write your own ticket, but you got to work harder on yourself and anything else, and you got to invest in yourself. And so that has been a journey for me now, 46 years. And what's led to is the privilege of being able to talk to you right now, the privilege of being able to raise my 5 kids and 5 grandkids into people they're proud of being and I'm proud of. be able to feed 1 billion people, plant 75 million trees, free 38,000 children now who are trafficked. These are all things I've been able to do with the success and the economics and the achievements that I've done. But most importantly, I've had this meaningful life and relationships. And we all have those. But if we want more, which is what this is all about, the road to more, right? Then we got to decide that we're going to get clear about what's holding us back, which is what Matthew's been showing us, admit. And then we got to get clear what we really want. We got to find what's getting in the way, and we got to track our way to do it. And so for me, I look at it this way. There are certain forces, I call them invisible forces. What shapes your life the most is usually invisible. It's electricity. Right now, because of it, we get to talk to each other. You get to be in a cool or warm home. Electricity is huge. You don't see it. It's invisible. It affects your life massively. How about gravity? Without that, we're not around. How about radiation? It's invisible. Too much, you're dead. Too little, you're dead. Our planet is in this perfect little spot with just the right balance of gravity and radiation and all these things that we can't even see, and they shape the quality of our life. But pragmatically, on a day-to-day portion, the most invisible, powerful force is human emotion. Think about it. Emotion is the ultimate power. We think it's our minds. Our minds are only operating because the way our emotions are, what we really want. Think about it. If you really think about it, emotions cause wars, and they eventually can cause peace. People get exhausted of feeling a certain way, tired of being pissed or frustrated, overwhelmed. They can get you married or get you divorced. It's how you end up having children is emotions, right? Everything is emotions, but most of us are not very masterful at our emotions. In fact, if you said, what's the quality of a person's life? If I said, is it the money they have? You and I both know there's plenty of people with tons of money that have killed themselves. Is it fame? A lot of famous people have taken their own life. All the things that the culture tries to make us believe is most important really isn't. If you say, what's really most important, the quality of your life, in my opinion, is the quality of where you live emotionally. We all have an emotional home, a place we find a way to get back to, whether things are going well or not. If you're used to being pissed off, you know anybody who's pissed off all the time? If there's nothing to be pissed off, they get pissed off about things that don't even relate to their own life. Or do you know somebody who's worried all the time? They worry about everything. If they can't worry about things in their own life, they worry about things that haven't happened yet to people they don't even know, right? Do you know anybody that's not really funny, but they think they are, right? They crack themselves up all the time, Well, we all have patterns of emotion. We have a home we get back to. And the quality of your life is your home. If you got $1 billion and every day you live in the emotions of being frustrated and pissed off and worried, then what's the quality of your life? It's frustrated, pissed off, and worried. If you have 3 beautiful children, a husband or wife you adore, but all day long you're worried, or all day long you're overwhelmed, your life is worry and overwhelming. You're missing your life. So we want to master those emotions. And the one we got to master, since I only got a couple minutes, if there's one to go after, it's the one that stops us. And you know what it is. Whenever you say to people, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you achieve your goal? They go, I didn't have the money. I didn't have the time. I didn't know the right people. I didn't have the right resources. I remember at a talk at TED one time, everybody in the room's like, Steve Jobs was there, these billionaire people there, and they're all saying these different things. One man said, I didn't have the right people. I heard one of his people say, we didn't have the right owner. People started laughing. And I heard one man said, I didn't have enough Supreme Court justices. And I looked down, it was Vice President Al Gore. I couldn't believe it, right? He's there in the room. So, and I said to everybody there, what I'd say to you, it's really never the resources. You're telling me I didn't have the time, the money, the resources, the people, the technology. Resources aren't the problem. Being unresourceful is the problem. Because anything you want to get resource-wise, capital, money, people, resource, opportunity, comes if you find the right emotions. If you're creative enough, you can find it. If you're determined enough, if you're loving enough, if you care for others enough, everything you want comes from mastering those emotions. But what gets in the way? F-E-A-R, fear. Jot in the chat box. What's a fear that's kept you from getting what you really want right now? Put it in the chat box if you would real quick. What's a fear? It's a fear of failure, success, rejection, loneliness, not looking good, being judged. What are the deepest fears that are out there? How many of you have, I'm curious by a show of hands, how many of you out there have a fear of failure? Make some noise if you've got a fear of failure out there. I'm curious. How many of you out there have a fear of success? Make some noise. Fear of success. How many of you have a fear of success and failure? With a show of hands. You people are screwed because you're screwed if you're on both sides. So we all All the fears we have come down to two primary fears. I hear people talk about the imposter syndrome all the time. That's just pop psychology for what we're really afraid of. We're all afraid we're not enough. We're not handsome enough. We're not funny enough. We're not sexy enough. We're not rich enough. We're not playful enough. We're not intellectual enough. We're too young or we're too old. All this is the game of the mind, and it's just based on fear. Because the truth is, if we're not enough, we're really afraid we won't be loved. Because we all were born with unconditional love. Even if you don't think you were loved, if you made it, somebody loved you. Somebody put your needs ahead of their own. But one day, the oxytocin in your mother made you love you, even though you look like a lizard. You know, some kids do, right? You're a kid. What does it take to be loved? You crap your pants, you loved. You spit out over your mother and father, you loved, right? You got no teeth, you're loved. You're fat, you're loved. You're bald, you're loved. Try that at 50. See how it works. See if it works for you really well, right? Because eventually those drugs that make your mother and father love you disappear, and now you got to prove yourself in some way. You got to be good enough. And so we all have this fear. But fear is the only thing stopping you. You got a story, but it's just fear. I haven't done it because of this and that. I got 3 kids. No, you're just afraid. Just be honest. And if you can be honest with the fear, you can deal with it. And how do you deal with fear? Let me give you 2 simple things. 1, turn it on itself. Turn it on itself. Get more afraid of failing to become who you were made to be for yourself, for your family, for this world, for your creator. See, if you start thinking about what you're missing out on because you're letting fear stop you, you may find yourself pushing through. I don't have time to tell you, but I've had so many experiences, and I developed this little rocking chair test. One example is I made it to my first talk show, Good Morning Minneapolis, to promote my first book, Unlimited Power. I was 23, and I couldn't get from the seminar there. They couldn't do it because the driving time was going to take, an hour and 15 minutes in Seattle to get there, and seminar wasn't going to end. I couldn't end it sooner. It's the only flight out. Couldn't cancel. Can't do anything. You're in a place where you're screwed if you do, screwed if you don't. And I was like, get a helicopter. I can land on the water. I'll run to the water. I'll jump on it. We'll fly. And so I took 12 minutes to get to the airport. Remember, this is it. I got to do this, like flying above all the traffic, bumper to bumper. What a way to live. But then I got home, right? And then what happens? You set this dream you're going to do, and it's like, oh, I got all these things I got to do, and I got too much time, and I don't have the money for that. And all the stories and excuses we tell ourselves because we're afraid. We're afraid to be disappointed. We're afraid to not be enough. We're afraid it won't work out. We're trained to say no instead of yes. You go to a clothing store, someone says, can I help you? What's the first response? No, I'm just looking. No kidding. That's why you're here. How can I help? Right? But what happens for us is we get so trained. So I did this little rocking chair test. I just said to myself, I need to be in a place where, I'm 90 years old, I'm on my rocking chair, and I'm looking at my life. And one is I never learned to fly. It's a good life. The other is I learned to ascend, take the doors off, take my kids, take my family, go diving down and do what I love to do now, which is called helicopter surfing. Other surfers don't like it, but I think it's really cool. It's quite fun. And so I was like, the 2 differences were so huge, like, no, I'm going to do what it takes. So I get to fly today. And I've been flying for 30 years, plus 40 years almost now. It's wild. So you can turn on self. But the other thing you got to realize is, what's the difference between fear and faith? People, they often don't know the difference. What would you say? Put it in the chat box. What's the difference between fear and faith? I'll give you a hint. They're both made up of your imagination. No one knows what the future is. Matthew said at the beginning here, some of the first words out of his mouth is the future is foggy, right? We're at this interesting time. Well, it's easy to make up the worst scenario because we're followed by the media. They're not bad people. Our friends in the media are just doing their job. Their job is to get your eyeballs, get you to click on, get you to look. And they know there's a primal part of your brain that responds more to fear and upset and anger than anything else. That's the survival mechanism. But you can get beyond survival. You can start to create life on your terms. And it doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you're afraid, but you do it anyway. That's what courage is, right? Courage is you're scared to death and you still find a way to do it. So most of my life I've been scared to death. I just did it. I wouldn't let the fear take control of me. But I realized fear and faith, what's the difference? Well, fear is imagination undirected, right? It's like weeds, it grows automatically. You don't have to work on fear. Faith, you decide what you're going to believe in, and you just keep envisioning it over and over until it becomes real for you, and then all of a sudden you start to manifest it in your life. You do the actions that are necessary. Listen, you were born with faith. I'll prove it to you. How many of you drive down a road most days of your life where there's nothing but a yellow line dividing you from a bunch of crazies, and they're driving at you at 60, 65 miles an hour? Think about it. And you're driving along, and every single day, people on the other side of that road fall asleep, they're drunk, they're texting, and they kill people in every city in the world, all over the earth, every single day. So how do you drive? Faith. And why? Because the alternative is stay home and do nothing. Well, we experienced that for 3 years of COVID, and it made most people crazy. That's not going to change your life. So fear is what we got to face. And how do you do it? Well, the other way to do it is feed what you want instead of what you fear. I'll give you an example. I went to racing school, I remember years ago. I want to learn to race. And I knew this guy, Bob Bondurant, one of the great racers in the world, and he had his own school. And I went up to Northern California, this place called Laguna Seca. This racetrack's amazing. And he said, Tony, I'm going to start, since we're friends, I'm going to show you what a race car can do. Get in the passenger seat, lock me all in, helmet on, let's go. And I went on a drive that I still can't forget. There's a place in Laguna Seca racetrack in those days called a corkscrew. We're going 120 miles an hour straight at a wall, and then you snap around it. Most people go about 80, but Bob goes 120, right? And I mean, I thought we were going to die for sure. At the end, my heart's beating out of my chest, and he goes, Tony, in 4 days, you're going to do that. I said, Bob, I'm a positive person, and you're full of crap. I said, I don't know if I even want to do that. He goes, Tony, we're not going to just send you out to do that. He said, first, we're going to put you in a spin car. I said, what's a spin car? Now listen up, because it's a perfect lesson for life. Perfect lesson for that journey to the road to more, to the quality of life you're really looking for. I said, what's a spin car? He goes, I'm going to put you in this car, and you're going to drive, and we're going to drive for a while, and you're going to get comfortable. And he said, we're going to go faster and faster, and there's going to be a point you'll lose concentration. Because when you see guys that are in race cars, you think, wow, how could they be sweaty? The concentration when you're going that fast is so intense. He goes, the minute you lose it, I got 4 little buttons over here, right below where I can't see by his seat. He goes, I'm going to push one of those 4 buttons right when you least expect it. It's going to lift one of the 4 wheels up, and we're going to spin out of control in that direction. I said, well, there's a wall right there. He said, that's right. We hit that wall full speed. Minimum is we're going to destroy the car and you're going to pay for it. But he said, worse, we could get injured or you could die. I said, okay, so what's the secret? He said, here's the secret. It's so simple. When you're running out of control, when you're spinning out of control, focus on where you want to go, not on what you're afraid of. I was like, no problem. I teach this shit. This is easy, right? It's just going to be no problem. So sure enough, I get in the car. I'm concentrating. He's not going to get me. I'm ready. Of course, does he push the button when you're ready? Life never pushes your buttons when you're ready, right? But we're not ready when you get tested. It's those red lights that get you, right? I always say to people, it's like, I've used the red light metaphor before Matthew, but I've always say, listen, it's in those times when you're most challenged, right? That's what determines your character, not when things are going well. Anybody can do well and be happy when it's going well. What do you do when all hell breaks loose, when it's unjust, when it's unfair? So sure enough, the button gets pushed, we spin out of control. What do? I immediately look at the wall, right? And as I'm like, oh my God. He grabs my head like this and forces it to the left. Now I'm fighting him because I want to see the death happen, right? It's going to happen. But he keeps my head going here. And of course, wherever you focus, that's where you steer. And so sure enough, we steer. And it's like, have you ever heard about a guy in a brand new Porsche driving down a country road 100 miles an hour, and there's one telephone pole every quarter of a mile, and a guy loses control and hits the pole? How come? Because he's like, oh my God, I don't want to hit the pole. So by forcing my head, sure enough, I steer in the right direction. And by the way, when you do the right thing, do you immediately get rewarded? Not always. There's a lag time. Someone says, I've been dieting for 5 days. I haven't lost any weight. Well, you've been a pig for 30 years. Come on, we got to change here. Come on, let's be honest. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? There's a lag time, right, to make the change. But sure enough, I'm feeling that lag time. That's why I want to look back. But he's holding my head, and sure enough, the wheels finally catch, and we miss the wall. Feels like 12 inches. It's probably more like 4 feet. But when you're scared, your brain exaggerates, doesn't it? So he looks at me and goes, did you learn? I said, I learned. I didn't learn squat. I didn't learn squat. I got right back in again. We're driving again. My Elise suspected he pushed a different wheel. We're spinning out of control. He grabs my head. After about 10 times of this, I learned to just train myself. Boom. And not look back. Keep focusing where I want to go. Even though I'm still skidding in that direction, keep focusing where I want to go. And sure enough, the wheels will catch. So now here's the question. Important question for you. If you focus on what you want versus what you don't want, are you guaranteed to get what you want? Yes or no? Put it in the chat. Yes or no? Put it in the chat. Oh, the answer is no, you're not guaranteed. But if you focus on the wall, are you guaranteed to hit it? And the answer, as you well know, is yes. So it's all about increasing our probabilities. That's what gives us the breakthroughs in our life. So how do I, in a short little moment, what can I give you? Well, I want you to know your life, when it's controlled by invisible forces, the most important thing that controls your life are 3 decisions. You're making them right now. But most of them make these decisions unconsciously. So whatever happens in our life, usually what happens is we have the same experiences day after day because we make some of the same unconscious choices about what to focus on, what to feel, etc. So let me give you 3 decisions that I want you to look at, that if you just looked at these 3 decisions, you could change your life today. Because I want to get real pragmatic with you as well. So the first decision we all make, and by the way, where this came from is, I told you when I was fed when I was 11 years old, no food, it's Thanksgiving. My mom and dad are saying things to each other that you can never take back after you said it. And my mom's let my dad know how he's completely left his family in the cold, and we wouldn't have starved. We had crackers and some peanut butter, but we weren't going to have a dinner. And this man arrives at the door. I answer the door, big guy, groceries, a pan on the ground of uncooked turkey, frozen turkey. Is your dad here? I thought it'd be the greatest day in the world. It wasn't. My father was insulted and angry. Without telling you the story, because I don't have enough time, all I can tell you was he did not respond well. He took the food, slammed it down, and was angry. And shortly after that, he left our family. Because he made these 3 decisions, I realized this years later, differently than I did. Not better, just differently, so he had a different life. The first decision that controls your life is, what are you going to focus on? Right now, in this moment, there are millions of things you can focus on. You could be focused on where you're going to go after this, what's been talked about, what you want to do with your life, what are you going to have for lunch, right? You can focus, what was just said, anything. You could focus on the blood rushing through your left ear. You weren't thinking of till I mentioned it, or the feeling of your clothing against your skin. You're not usually noticing that. But sure enough, whatever you focus on, you're going to feel. Please write down, focus equals feeling. It isn't true. If you have this thing like someone tells you, oh, this person's been talking behind your back, and you go, no, they're not. 2 or 3 people say, yes, they have. They've been talking behind your back, and then all of a sudden you're angry or you're sad or you feel hurt. And later on you find out they weren't talking behind your back. It was a misinterpretation. You feel like an idiot. But it's real to you when you focus on something. So you got to consciously choose what to focus on. If you focus on something, though, the second decision your brain makes is, what does it mean? So let's say you're supposed to meet your husband or your wife for dinner for 7:30. You get there at 7:30 and they're not there. Well, you focus on it, but you give it a meaning. What's the meaning? Well, some people get really worried. Some people get really angry. I'll ask people in a big seminar, 7:30, they're not showing up. What are you feeling? One person goes worried. Another person goes pissed off. Well, it's only 7:30, right? But what if it's 8:30? What if it's 8:30, you've been there for an hour, they've not called, they've not shown up, they've not texted. Now what are you feeling? Person goes really pissed off, really worried. One woman says to me, full, I'm not waiting for the bastard anymore, right? But the difference is not based on just focus, it's the meaning you gave it. One person, meaning they imagine they're in a car accident, so they're worried. The other person manages they're screwing around with somebody else. And whatever you focus on, whatever meaning you get, creates emotion. And the emotion shapes your life. Is the meaning, this is the end or the beginning? If you think this is the end of a relationship, you're going to behave very differently than if you think it's the beginning of a relationship. In the beginning of a relationship, what will you do for somebody? Make the sound of what you're like when you're really and totally in love. Go ahead, make the sound of being in love out there, guys. You can do it. For some of you, it's been a while, I can tell just by that, okay? But if you're really totally in love, what do you want to do for somebody? Anything, whatever you want. Hey, would you take out the trash? I'll take out the trash, of course. What else could I do for you, right? I love you. But after 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 years, or 7 years, somewhere in there, someone goes, could you take out the trash? And go, what do I look like? Your janitor, right? And some people go, I don't know what it was. We used to have so much passion. What happened? Well, you changed the meaning. I always tell people, if you don't want this to be the end of your relationship, treat it like the beginning of your relationship. Do what you did in the beginning and there won't be an end. Or what if someone comes to you and does something? Are they dissing you, disrespecting you? Are they challenging you? Are they coaching you? Or are they loving on you? If you think they're disrespecting you, you're going to have a very different response. You think they're loving you. And then the second decision, what it means, produces emotion. And emotions control the third decision. If you think you're disrespected, a very different emotion than if you think someone's loving you. You think it's the end, very different emotion than the beginning. And we're in control of what it means. But most of us do it on automatic pilot. So the third decision is, what am I going to do? And what you do is what controls your life. Your actions are what shape it all. But your actions are shaped by these first two decisions. So let me give you 3 patterns real fast, something practical for you. Let's try this out. Put it in the chat and remember this. These are not about you, nothing to feel good or bad about, no judgment. Just think of it as software in your brain. So here's a pattern of focus that affects people's lives, and everyone has it. Do you tend to focus more on what you have or more on what's missing? On what you have or what's missing? We all do both, right? But which one do you focus more on? And during COVID, which one did you focus more on? Now, I'm sure some of you are putting here in the chat, I can't see all the chats at once here, but I can tell you when I ask this in an audience of 20 or 30,000 people, I'm blown away. The vast majority of people tend to focus more on what's missing. Even super achievers do. Now, don't get me wrong. Noticing what's missing so you can make it better, that's part of the process of on the road to more. But you can't do it constantly, because if you're constantly focusing on what's missing, you cannot sustain happiness. You only build on success. So you learn from the failures. And I love what Matthew said earlier, right? It's like, he said, what do you learn more from, your failures or successes? I think you learn more from your failures because most people, when they succeed, they party. When they fail, they ponder, hopefully. And more than ponder, find something, pull something out that makes you better. It's not a failure if you learn, right? But the bottom line is if you and I are going to take that to the next level, if you and I are going to say, okay, we're going to produce the results we've really wanted in our life at the highest level, then we're going to have to come up with the most empowering meaning. We're going to have to take the most empowering actions on a consistent basis. Does that make sense? That's all you got to do to make your life work. And again, a step at a time. You know, I'm feeding 1 billion people. It started with 2, and then 4, and then 6, and then 8. Most people, again, they overestimate. I used to beat myself up because I hadn't achieved these giant goals within a year. Well, now, you know, it's been 46 years that I've been doing this. And literally tens of millions of people around the world, the people I've been able to get to know and touch and help and be helped by and learn and grow and share. It's beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of. But it's because I stayed on that area. So I think of it this way. You want to change your life today? Make a decision. That's it. Make a decision of something else you're going to focus on. Like focus on what you want, focusing on instead of what you don't want, right? Focus on where you want to go instead of what you're afraid of. You know, focus on a deeper meaning. Like, what if everything in life happened for a reason and it served you? What if life was always happening for you, not to you? I don't know if that's true, but I believe it. Because I believe it, I believe there's got to be something good in the worst situation. And so I dig and I dig and I dig, and I can always find it. A lot of people say, well, your mom, I don't think she went off with your mom. My mom was the greatest mom I could imagine. If she had been the mom I wanted her to be, I wouldn't be the man I'm proud to be. Because I had to grow and learn and become a practical psychologist. And she had a beautiful heart. I'm a big part of her is in me still today. So I tossed out those things because we all have those things that don't work. And I focused on where the real value is. So think today, what decision could you make today that would move you forward? What could you do right now today? Tell you one thing, get Matthew's course. Please do. I mean, I don't care. It's not going to change my life economically, but it'll change your life completely. He's put his heart and soul into this thing. And how cool to be able to have Matthew coaching you one-on-one in your home, on your TV, or on your laptop or your iPad, 24/7, 365, whenever you want it. He'll take you on a journey you're going to love. I'm going through it right now. I think it's spectacular. I'm always absorbent, but this is a whole nother level. That's why I want to share it with you. But I'll give you an example of taking real action. Most people have great intent. They get excited, say, I'm going to do something, and then their brain goes, who are you kidding? Or I'm going to do something, and then they get home and they get caught up in their emails and their demands and the calls and the people and their kids. They lose momentum because they don't take action while they're in state. So I'll tell you just a quick little story to finish up. I have 5 kids, 5 grandkids. My oldest daughter, Jolie, when she was 21, I believe it was the time, maybe 20, her whole dream had always been to be a dancer on Broadway since she was a little girl. So she's going to college. She's competing in dance competitions, really winning all these trophies. She's home for, the break, the holiday break at Christmas. And I sat down with her. I said, honey, how you doing? I'm doing great, Dad. This is going great. I said, no, I'm so proud of you. Straight A's in school. She did incredibly well. Really, really diligent student and great human being. And I'll just say it because my daughter, she just really is. And so I said to her, honey, I want to ask you something though. How are you doing on your dream? I'm going to ask you the same thing. Some people have forgotten what their dreams are. And she goes, well, what do you mean? I said, how are you doing on your dream? She goes, well, I said, your dream to become a dancer on Broadway. It's like she was already letting it drift away a little bit. She goes, well, Dad, I'm in school, I'm doing well, and I'm doing dance classes and I'm competing. I said, I know, honey, but you're beating everybody you're competing against, which tells me that we need you to grow. And also beating people in LA is different than Broadway. It's a different culture. It's a different standard there. She's saying, well, what are you saying? I'm saying, honey, I think sometimes you think I'm a genius, and of course I am. I'm your father. I'm a total genius, right? So I said, but my genius is not what you think it is. My genius is whenever opportunity's in front of me, if something's in front of me, I say, God or the universe, whatever your preference is, for me it's God, put it there for a reason. It's my job to do something with it. And I grab it by the hair. And some opportunities don't turn out to be much. Some turn out to be disappointing. But by always going for what's in front of me, most of the time it's led to something extraordinary where other people just dream about it, think about it. And I don't do it because it's easy. Jim Rohn taught me, if you say you can't do something, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the effort, then you must. If you know that by doing it, you'll be better, stronger, wiser, a better person, more successful, more to give. And so I said, I live that. She goes, Dad, I see that, I see that. And I said, I'm concerned that you are such a good person, you're doing so well, but you're missing that sense of urgency. And I've never lost it, and that's why I have the life I have. And I said, in your case, there is a timeline on a dancer. You can't do this when you're 50 and start then to become a Broadway person. I said, you got to begin now. She goes, well, what are you suggesting? I said, I'm suggesting you do what I teach. You get in the environment with the best in the world, you learn, grow, and compete around the clock. She goes, what does that look like? I said, you leave, you move to New York City, you take care of the classes. I'll pay for the classes. You got to pay for your housing. I'll pay your housing first 90 days, but I'm not going to have some weak person there. You have to be on your own, but I'll pay for the classes. You pay for your housing, and let's see what you can do. I said, I believe you could be a star on Broadway, but I'm your dad, so I'm biased. I don't know for sure. I believe you can, but the only way we're going to know is to get in that environment and learn and grow and compete. And she's saying, well, when are you saying I should do this? I said, when would now be a good time? She goes, Dad, you say that phrase all the time. I said, because it's true. When would now be a good time for you to go after what you want? Not wait another day. People don't do it because they go, I don't know where to start. Do whatever's next. Try anything. If it's wrong, try something else. That doesn't work. Try something else and you'll find it. She's saying, like right now in the middle of a semester? I said, right now. Tell me how you're going to be closer to your dream at the end of these 6 months than if you don't take action versus if you take action today. She thought for a moment. She goes, Dad, that's a big step. I said, that's how our life changes. Little steps and big steps. And the big ones move us faster. And they take courage. Courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared, but you do it anyway. She goes, well, maybe I should get someone in the entertainment business to give me some feedback about this. I said, sure, people pay me $1 million a year to coach them, but you should go to somebody else to get some feedback. And she laughed. She goes, no, Dad, no. I'm sure you're right, but I just, in the entertainment view, I said, who are you thinking of? She said, how about Jay Maloney, a good friend of ours who was at CA. He's since passed, but he was a top agent there. And she goes, okay. I said, honey, I think that's a great idea. Call Jay and find out. She goes, okay. I said, what are you doing here? She goes, I'm talking to you. I said, that's right. What are you doing here? I said, go call him. She goes, right now? I said, right now. So she goes to the other room, call him. True story. I quickly call him, right? Fortunately gets through because he's a good friend. I said, listen, you're going to get a call from Jolie in a minute. Here's what I told her. She's here. She's doing that. I want you to tell her the truth, but am I on the right track? He goes, Tony, absolutely. He goes, New York is different than LA. If she's got to go, she's got to get in proximity to that group. I said, well, I'll tell her that. Hung up. She comes back 2 minutes later. He's on another call. I said, don't give up so easily. Call him back, right? So sure enough, she calls and she's gone for like, almost an hour and 15 minutes. He talked to her 45 minutes to an hour. And she comes back and she was in this really interesting state and she kind of nodded her head. And I said, so what'd he say? She said, you're right. I said, of course. Right? I said, it's not me right. It's what's right, honey. She goes, he said that if I'm going to compete, I got to get there and I got to do it now. I said, then let's do it. So we flew, I'll never forget, a couple days later, found her apartment, got her to New York. My little daughter, I grew up in a tough environment. She grew up on the beach of Del Mar, California, San Diego area. And so now it was the hardest winter they'd had in like 8 years. She toughened up, she got her classes. And so I was checking in on her, and about, I don't know to be accurate, probably about 7 or 8 months later, I called her. She actually called me and said, when are you coming to New York? And so I said, let me know, I'll let you know. I called her and let her know I was coming. And I got to the airport and there's a car there for me. My daughter sent me. It's like, first of all, that's a big expense. I hope she didn't spend that money, but okay. I get in the car and I said, okay, you're taking me, my daughter? He goes, yes. And so we drive And we drive, and we drive past where the turn is to go to her apartments. And we go to downtown, and now we're down in the district where all the plays are going. And all of a sudden we pull up to the play Tommy that Elton John did, and there's my daughter's name on there, starring in Tommy. 8 months later, ladies and gentlemen, how is that for incredible? So I'd love to take full credit for my daughter's success, but I don't have any dancing success or any ability to teach her anything in that area. But what I did get her to do is to make the decision and take immediate action. And so I always tell people, whenever you hear something you know is valuable, do not wait. In that moment, do something that commits you to follow through later on, something that's going to get you to follow through. So right now, what's a decision you could make right now if you wanted to? What's a decision, an easy one that you've been talking about doing that you're not doing? That if you'd made the decision, you acted upon it immediately, it'd improve your life. Something with your diet, something with your relationship, something in your business or your career, something you've been putting off. What would be a big decision that if you made it and went for it would change everything? Think about that, but more importantly, maybe make one. I'm out of time pretty much here, so I got to get off here. It's the shortest talk I've ever done in my life. But I want you to really make a decision, ladies and gentlemen. And if you really make a decision, I'll tell you a little secret. Use your body. There's all this research. I just read another study about this recently, that if you put your body in a strong state, you make a strong move, you make a strong sound, yes, anything intensely that adds tension in your body, your willpower goes about 35%. And I've taught people this for years. If Harvard did a study, and I teach people all these techniques because I teach not just philosophy, but strategy to get you to follow through. And Harvard did a study, and I've taught for years how changing your body changes the way you feel. If you think of a depressed person, their shoulders are down, their breathing is shallow, their head is down, they talk slowly. But if you take that person, put their shoulders back, speed up the tempo, make a different tempo of gestures, their biochemistry changes. So Harvard did a study and they called it power postures. Have you ever seen like Superman or Wonder Woman with their hands on their hips, standing tall, shoulders back, head up? If you do that for 2 minutes, just stand tall like this, your shoulders back, head up, two things happen. Your testosterone surges 20%, whether you're a man or woman, doesn't matter. And cortisol, which is the stress hormone, drops by 33%. And your willingness to take an action that's fearful jumps through the roof by almost 30%. So there's lots of ways to do it. But if it's easy, do it easy. If it's hard, do it hard. But make a decision today. And I hope one of those decisions, invite Matthew as a mentor. He's become a mentor for Dean and I because he looks at life from a different angle. It's beautiful, it's unique, it's special, it's soulful. I know you can feel him. I know you must have been a fan of his to come here in the first place. But don't let it end today. Don't let this be the end. Let it be the beginning. And by the way, if you decide to do that, I'll add to the more. I have, at this stage of my life, it's pretty amazing. I have 111 companies. We do $7 billion in business across all these different industries, beyond my education business, obviously. And I learned all that a step at a time along the way. But the hardest lesson was managing time. And not just managing time, but creating a quality of life where I could be a great father. And today I got a 2-year-old and I got 48-year-old, to give you an idea. I've got grandkids. I got all that. I got all these companies. I'm here with you. We're working on this project with Matthew. There's so many things that we're doing. How do you do all that? You can't do it with a to-do list. Make a to-do list. There's always more to do than you have time. How many can relate? Make some noise if you can relate to having more to do than you have time for. So I built this system that without it, I wouldn't be who I am. And it's a system that we call it the time of your life, or RPM. It shows you how to not focus on what to do, but focus, what do you want and why do you want it? What gets in the way of success is the tyranny of how. When people start, okay, I want to do this, but how am I going to do it? I'm going to do this. And your brain goes, I don't know how, I've never done it. And so you stop. But the greatest leaders in the world all knew what they want and why they want it. When Kennedy got up and said, we're going to put a man in this decade on the moon, return him to the earth, the people at NASA he's crazy. We can't do that. We don't have the tools. And we landed a man on the moon with a technology that's 1/100th that's in your cell phone right now. And it was impossible, and they did it. He knew what it was. He knew why it was important, and then they figured out how. Martin Luther King got up and talked about a dream he had about how we could be, and we've got a lot more to go in that area. But hey, we had a president that mostly white people voted for 8 years in President Obama. Whether you like him or not personally doesn't matter. We all voted for him as a group, And what loved on him, like our culture has shifted since the time of Martin Luther King quite a bit. And he didn't know how, but he knew what and why. This course is going to help you do the what and why, and then I'll show you how to manage that in little bite-sized chunks so you're not overwhelmed. And that's also what Matthew is going to do. So that's going to be my gift to you. If you decide to do this, Matthew, it's called The Time of Your Life. You're going to get that as a bonus. And I think I made it within my timelines, or hope so. God bless you guys all. Matthew, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Everybody here.